There comes a time in every man's life when he has to step up, when he has to continuously struggle towards the impossible, to achieve what's best for himself and for his future, where he must meticulously look inside himself, understand his strengths, flaws, and inner workings, and work tirelessly at self-improvement. At this time, this critical juncture in his life, where he must intuitively understand every fiber of his being, he'll wake up having forgotten everything and end up the protagonist in a degenerate visual novel. Sisters, The Last Day of Summer is a short, recently localized, fully animated visual novel about the Kamimura family and its fated guest, Yu, the amnesiac, nameable protagonist. On one hot summer day, you wake up in an unfamiliar house occupied by an unfamiliar family, one mother and her two daughters. Despite being strangers, they are extremely welcoming, and quickly you become a part of their lives as you enjoy each hot summer day and form bonds with them. But hidden lies a tremendous secret that this family can't let out, no matter what. And that's the entire premise. The story is very simple and matter of fact, and whilst the visual novel will incorporate story beats and a plot twist that complicates the narrative, the plot has one clear purpose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As Sisters slowly counts up the days to the last day of summer, Protag-kun spends time with the Kamimura sisters, learning everything he can about this family he knows nothing about, whilst unknowingly being the subject of their interfamilial drama. Before I delve deeper into discussing the story, and I've got a lot to say about the story, don't you worry, I'd like to give you a brief introduction of the characters, starting with the mother of the Kamimura family, Akiko. Akiko is the widowed mother of her daughters, Chika and Haruka. Clearly very kind, but also very ditzy, Akiko plays a very minor part in the story. She exists on the first day to meet and greet Protag-kun, and is pretty much the tutorial character. After the first day, she goes on a trip to the same fateful place all anime parents go to, the Shadow Realm. Waking up on the second day, we'll meet the Kamimura sisters, first of which is Chika, the younger sister who is very much the splitting image of her mother. Whilst being the younger of the two sisters, she can be quite mature, though this isn't always the case. She wears her heart on her sleeve and dearly loves her family. Haruka, on the other hand, gives typical One-chan vibes. She is very kind and a traditional Yamato Nadeshiko at her core, and whilst she doesn't take after her mother in looks, she definitely has her goofy side. She fervorously loves animals and has many natural talents that at times makes Chika jealous. I like the characters of Sisters quite a lot, not because they are unique, but because they don't need to be, and they don't try to be. In dropping many of the typical visual novel and anime tropes that heroines often have, the characterizations of the Kamimura sisters help accentuate the realism of the story, which adds impact to later plot reveals. Speaking of plot reveals, here's one I bet you didn't expect. Sisters, among some of its other elements, is highly acclaimed for its story and plot twists that take the traditional Nukige visual novel protagonist as a plot device and skillfully integrates it into an emotionally impactful story. That being said, whilst I respect its effort in doing so, I think the emotional impact the plot is gunning for ends up falling flat for a couple of reasons. The first reason is, ironically enough, the reason the plot works in the first place: the placeholder Nukige protagonist. Visual novels are known for having bland protagonists, so the reader can easily self-insert, and that's fine, but this protagonist is literally a piece of wood. There are narrative reasons for this, of course, but that doesn't mean we aren't stuck in his perspective for a good portion of the visual novel. Sisters is a story carried by obviously the Kamimura sisters and their feelings for Protag-kun, but that doesn't mean the protagonist, being a dud, isn't annoying. To emphasize, I understand that he needs to be this way, but it doesn't mean he's not boring. The second reason is pacing. The beginning of this visual novel is very slow. You meet Akiko, you explore the house, you build the fence, eventually Akiko pieces out and the sisters emerge. Everyone introduces themselves, you spend quality time with them, you're still building that fucking fence, At times there are scenes with TV ads or the characters watching a TV show, which does nothing for the plot, simply padding reading time and likely an excuse to reuse animation. A slow-paced story is fine, but then the pacing speeds up dramatically. Flashback scenes are sprinkled throughout the novel, slowly unraveling the mystery of the Kamimura family's secret. Things slow down to a crawl again as we get our H-scene quota out of the way, and then it's over. The best way to describe the pacing in Sisters is that it gives you fucking whiplash. Every other problem I can think of circles back to the pacing, so I'll leave it there for now. That being said, in no way do I dislike the plot. One thing I respect Sisters for is committing to one simple plotline, making it, mostly besides the reasons I previously mentioned, enjoyable and engaging for its entire 5-hour length, and not going off track by adding fan service or forcing unnecessary side plot lines. It's not often you read a story with such a focused plot. It's like the exact opposite of a Ryukishi visual novel. Whilst I overall have a mixed perception of the story and the way it unravels, I still think this is worth a read if you are looking for a visual novel that has a slight bit of mystery and creatively plays around the standard mechanics of visual novels. If I talked you out of buying it, I tell you to hold the phone, because if you couldn't tell already, the other huge draw for this visual novel is the drawings move. This visual novel is fully animated. Sisters is objectively the best animated visual novel I have ever read. The animations are crisp and plentiful, and it really is the closest visual novel I have seen to an anime. You've been watching it thus far, so I'm sure there isn't much I really need to say. This culminates in the H scenes, however. I genuinely think that Sisters has the best H scenes I have ever seen in a visual novel. Every single one has unique animations, a variety of sexual acts, and they don't overstay their welcome either, at least individually, though near the end of the novel, there are many H scenes chained back to back. Every character in the Kamimura family has at least one H scene, with obviously the sisters getting the vast majority of them. It definitely wouldn't be a stretch to say that Sisters, The Last Day of Summer, is fun for the whole family. If nothing else, and this is the first time I'm saying this, Sisters is worth picking up for the H scenes alone. There are times where the animation is reused, such as for the sprites, and various reoccurring activities, such as the characters watching TV or eating dinner, but this won't be often enough to belittle your enjoyment. Some parts, such as the TV bits that happen way too often, are clearly written to pad read time and reuse animation. But I can't really fault the animation for that, as it's more of a writing and budgeting issue. However, the last thing I want to talk about here are the 3D bits you occasionally have to play through, as well as the 3D panning shots you'll sometimes be forced to sit through. They look abysmal. I get this is probably a custom-made visual novel engine with focus on animation, but dear God, it's bad. It's fucking annoying to play through, and it looks like it came out of an early PS1 game. I would have been happier looking at a house made in Microsoft Paint. Speaking of the likelihood of this being a custom-made engine, it comes with all the associated problems of one, in that it's fucking jank. One reason I gave Shiny Days a terrible review is that I couldn't play it because of the constant crashes. Well, you'll never guess what happened in Sisters. Mind you, most of my crashes occurred midway through the game during the highly animated H scenes, but at times I would be fighting just to get through an H scene, quick saving one line of dialogue at a time so I could get by. This is not how I wanted to be fucked during an H scene. At one point, Sisters kept soft-locking after a flashback scene and only progressed when I proceeded through it in windowed mode rather than full screen mode. This only happened once, but if I wasn't someone with the tenacity to bypass bullshit technical bugs, I probably would have just given up. This shit is not okay. You can argue that this visual novel has clearly aged and was not meant to be run on Windows 10 or 11 and what have you, and I tend to agree. But if it is localized and released mid-2024 and $30 fucking, then at bare minimum do I expect this game to function properly on the current Windows operating system. But I digress. The last thing I have to mention here is that you can't skip scene transitions nor animation pans, which is extremely fucking annoying. Quick save often, ladies and gentlemen, because if you crash, you're in for a long wait. Sisters, The Last Day of Summer is a unique visual novel with many draws and just as many drawbacks. My overall verdict is yes, I would recommend it, but I wouldn't prioritize it, and I wouldn't buy it at full price either. It is undoubtedly the best animated visual novel on the market that I know of, besides maybe Steins Gate Elite, but God forbid I mention that, and a very high quality short story with an interesting, narrow, focused narrative. Let me know what your thoughts are on Sister's Last Day of Summer. I've noticed that my thoughts are not exactly the popular opinion on this visual novel, so if you love it, tell me why. And as always, you know what to do if you like the video, and I'll see you next time.